Beneath the earth, beauty hides teeth. What begins as an adventure, laughter, ropes, bright beams of light, can collapse in a heartbeat into a death trap of water, stone, and silence. These are not just stories of caves, but of people who stepped in alive and never stepped back out. In today's story, 3 journeys underground begin with curiosity and end under the weight of rock, water, and time. Each one a reminder that in caves, the smallest mistake is not small at all. One friend will climb into a roaring waterfall to reach another he cannot leave behind. 4 divers will follow a marker they trust and discover, too late, that trust can be misplaced. 19 people will wedge themselves into a stone keyhole and discover how thin a line there is between courage and catastrophe. Viewer discretion advised. March 18, 1997. The sky over Tennessee is the color of old steel, a steady drizzle threading the trees as 2 friends shoulder coils of rope and lay out hardware at the mouth of a pit that locals speak of with a mix of respect and bravado. Real well. A clean drop, famous, 160 feet straight down, beautiful in photographs, and merciless in rain. Andrew, 32, moves with the practiced economy of someone who has done this enough times to believe in systems. Attila, 26, is newer, 5 caves worth of experience and a heart that wants more. Their anticipation has been building for weeks. It fills the pauses in their sentences as they sort gear. It drowns out the simple, ordinary thought that would have saved them. Today is wetter, colder, louder than they planned for. The roar telegraphs the truth before their eyes do. Water is pouring into the shaft in a long, silver sheet. It flings mist into their faces as they rig. The car heater is still warm when one of them says the thing they both want to hear. We won't need the wetsuits. They're in the car. The air stings, but not enough, they tell themselves. The rope bag thumps to the ground. Knots are dressed. Checks are called. There is a path that keeps you dry here, but it is not the line they choose. The anchor goes in the fall line, right where the water hits hardest. They know they'll get wet. They do not yet know how quickly the cold will move from skin to muscle to thought. There are other small decisions, the kind that don't feel like decisions until afterward. Attila has no helmet. It was a rush this morning, and the checklist in his head skipped a line. His harness is a commercial seat, paired with a hand-tied chest loop. Andrew goes first. The rope hums under his weight. The spray hits him like thrown gravel. The waterfall finds his spine and rides it. Cold water sneaks down sleeves, into the waist, through socks. His descent device sings a low metallic note as he feeds line. By the bottom, he is already shivering, not dramatically, just enough to make you want to move faster than caution allows. He swings in, calls up, and his voice sounds smaller in the drum of the pit than it did at the rim. Attila follows. The rope is slick now, a live thing under gloved hands, the sheath rich with water. The light from above shrinks to a coin, then to a pin. Spray scours the back of his neck. He tells himself not to look at the water, to keep eyes on the next movement, the next contact. He lands hard, breathes, and for a moment the cave is beautiful in the way that water-carved rooms always are. Walls shining with a skin of moisture, air fat with mist, sound a constant physical presence you have to talk through. They shoulder packs and move into the passage. Their headlamps paint tunnels in front of them that become the whole world. 30 minutes. That's all it takes for the simple physics of wet fabric and moving air to do their work. The cold lives in layers. Surface sting, then tremor, then the fatigue that pours sand into your joints. Attila is the first to say it out loud. He doesn't make a speech. He just tells his friend the truth of his body. I can't stay down here. His teeth won't meet cleanly. His words stick to the inside of his mouth and come off in pieces. Andrew hears the change in the voice, a thinness, a drag between words, and answers the way experienced partners do. We're going up now. There is a ritual to reversal underground. You put the cave back the way it was. You tidy your anchor in your head before you touch it with your hands. You build the rope work that points not downward into discovery, but upward toward light. And you do it against the noise of water that keeps telling you to hurry. Haste is the oldest lie caves tell you. It sounds like reason. It feels like survival. It is neither. Attila rigs his ascent system. Later, people will trace each piece the way investigators trace the path of a fire. The handled ascender clipped to that too long cow's tail. The shunt added as comfort more than plan. The string of non-locking binders joining seat and chest in a chain the water will tug at all afternoon. In the moment, it looks like readiness. He clips in and starts up into the downpour. There is nothing gentle about climbing under a waterfall. Each pull is a negotiation. Hands numb under gloves that now keep water against the skin as much as they keep rock off it. The rope pumps a spray into his face as it moves. The shunt that should settle and wait for him to move keeps slipping, a petulant, stubborn thing that will not do what he asks at the angle the water forces on him. His progress is measured not in feet, but in breaths. The cave wall is close enough to press his shoulder to, but slick enough to throw him back into the rope. Cold folds itself into his forearms and waits. Halfway, somewhere between the bottom and a ledge he cannot see yet, the small choices line up. Words. Andrew hears enough to understand the shape of the trouble, if not the details. "Come down if you need to," he shouts, and the cave turns it into a smear of sound. The minutes go long and bend. There is a point in cold when thinking gets dirty around the edges. It looks like resignation from the outside. When Attila finally gets the words out, "I can't," Andrew is already moving. You don't choose to climb into that much water to do a rescue. You find yourself partway up the rope and realize that you did not decide so much as become the kind of person who can't not go. He climbs into the white. The rope shudders under two bodies now. The spray that was a wall becomes weather. Every foot of progress is a price. He reaches his friend and sees what the water has been doing while he moved. A man hanging, limp, eyes open but far away, a jaw bearing chattering teeth when it tries to shape a word. Hypothermia declares itself without asking for permission. Pale skin, lost fine motor, a slow folding inward of the person you know. There is a technique for this. It is called a pick-off, and when it works it looks like magic. You become the system. You transfer their load to your own. You give the rope a new story to tell, one that ends at the ground. But magic requires hands that answer commands, and his fingers feel like wood. He tries anyway. He builds with what he has in reach and can barely feel. The water drills the back of his neck and informs him, over and over, that time is not on his side. The shunt will not behave. The cow's tail is an iron bar. He gets halfway to a solution, and the cold edits his plan until it is no longer a plan. Pick-offs in training happen clean, dry, and patient. This is none of those. He swaps tactics, clips short. Then he climbs out, alone, and every upward move is heavier than the last. The rescue starts when the story most people call the rescue is already over. Hours later, teams come, lights multiply. The rope hums again, and a doctor on scene says the word that the cave had been saying for a long time: hypothermia. It will be written down that the gear was wrong in specific ways, that wetsuits stayed in a car that was too close to ignore and too far to help, that rigging in the fall line made a strong pit into a violent one, that a chain of non-locking carabiners made failure not only possible but likely, that a long cow's tail moved control out of human hands and into water's hands. All of that is true. It is also true that two people loved each other enough to do exactly what they did, right up to the edge where love cannot change physics. December 2004, Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico. The surface world is warm, full of gold sun and green canopy, but only a few feet below waits something colder, darker, infinitely less forgiving. Beneath the limestone lies a labyrinth, Sac Actun, more than 360 kilometers of tunnels and chambers stretching unseen in every direction. Divers call it a wonder. Locals whisper its dangers. That morning, 9 men stood on the edge of Cenote, Kalimba with gear lined up like surgical instruments, preparing to enter the longest underwater cave system in the world. They checked regulators and tanks with astronaut precision, clipped spools of line, set aside bright plastic cookies used as markers. Years of dives had taught them that in a world where vision can collapse to inches, the line is not a tool, it is life itself. They trusted one another, trusted their discipline, trusted the cave to obey the same rules it had yesterday. Trust is what would betray them. 2 teams, 1 plan. Team A, led by a guide, would go first and lay the markers. Team B would follow close, turning back once they reached a set point, tracing the path to daylight by reversing each choice. Everyone nodded as if agreement itself was armor. The average depth was modest, 33 feet, currents mild, paths familiar. They had faced worse, they told themselves. This one would be manageable. But the cave does not grade on difficulty. It only punishes mistakes. The first team slid into Kalimba's clear entrance, water closing over masks, bubbles rising in perfect rhythm. They followed the permanent guideline, clipping cookies at intersections. At the first fork, a yellow marker went onto the jump line, an arrow pointing the way back. Movements were smooth, synchronized, textbook. The second team entered minutes later, following the same line, reassured when they saw the marker glowing faint in torchlight. Confidence in place, they swam on. What no one knew was that a storm of errors had already begun to form. 32 minutes into the dive, Team B reached the second marker. Here, one choice became 2, and 2 became catastrophe. They should have turned right, back toward the exit. Instead, they turned left. B was still below, lost, and would soon have no trail left to follow. Minutes stretched into a nightmare underwater. Team B stopped, tried to regain bearings. At an intersection, they unspooled new line, probing the dark for the permanent path. Fingers found only stone, no lifeline. Their air gauges ticked down faster, every breath sharper, louder, greedier. Panic chews oxygen. Panic eats time. They split into pairs, a last attempt to double their chances. The lead pair swam ahead, desperate for something familiar. When they reached the place they had gone wrong, they met the cave's cold truth. The marker that should have been there was gone. Only rock, dark and blank. At the same moment, the second pair fell farther behind, air dwindling, vision failing. Buddy breathing began. 2 mouths on one regulator, trading seconds of life back and forth. At the surface, realization finally hit. Team B was gone too long. Extra tanks were grabbed. The guide and others plunged back into the water, urgency pounding in their veins. They found the lead pair first, only 250 feet from safety. Both men still alive but hanging by a thread. Tanks almost empty. Gasping, they tried to explain through broken words. The others were just behind. They had seen their lights. Rescuers waited, strained eyes into the dark water. Minutes passed. No one came. They swam back in. The second pair lay suspended near the ceiling, motionless, regulators drifting from their lips. Their tanks read 0. They had suffocated within sight of rescue. Bodies were pulled gently through the passage. The cave was quiet again, indifferent as always. The record says 2 died in Cenote, Kalimba that day. Divers who knew them say it was a cascade of errors. A wrong turn, a marker gone. Panic in a place where panic cannot exist. The truth is simpler. The cave does not forgive. Even skill, trust, and camaraderie break in its silence. And once broken, there is no repair. January 1970, New York State. The forest lay heavy with snow, branches sagging under the weight of winter, the air so sharp it stung in every breath. 31 adventurers set out that morning, bundled in layers, boots crunching in rhythm toward a cave whose name was whispered, with both challenge and warning, Knox. They were young, eager, defiant against the cold. Inside that cave waited a passage that had become legend, the gun barrel. 18 inches wide, 60 feet long, a stone throat that demanded you flatten yourself and crawl, scraping belly and back against unyielding rock. For many, passing through it was a badge of honor. For 19 of them, it would become a trial that turned honor into nightmare. Among the group was Peter Vini, just 14, his first caving trip. He watched as others slid into the squeeze ahead of him, bodies moving like worms through the narrow keyhole, some confident, others halting. When it was his turn, he pressed into the dark with adrenaline and pride. The tunnel pressed back. Rock rasped his elbows and knees. Breath grew shallow, each pause heavy. 8 feet from the far end, so close he could almost see daylight, his knee slipped into a narrow crevice. He pulled, twisted, cursed. It did not come free. Panic lanced through him. He shouted, and the sound filled the gun barrel like a trapped animal. At first, the group ahead moved on, unaware, but one by one they stopped, voices echoing, shouts bouncing back and forth through stunning until everyone knew Peter was stuck. His body blocked the passage, sealing 19 people into the rock throat with him. Forward was impossible, backward, unthinkable. They tried immediately, tugging, twisting, pushing from behind, but every attempt only drove pain deeper into the boy's leg. His cries cut through the cold. They had no choice but to wait. Hours passed in that narrow stone coffin. The cave's chill crept into their bones. Every degree lost to the air, another nail hammered into their endurance. Hypothermia became a silent partner. The younger ones shook with fear, voices thin in the dark, while the older cavers tried to soothe them, knowing too well how brittle calm can be in such a place. Outside, the rest of the party grew restless. Too much time had gone. A scout went in and saw the truth. Peter wedged, the others jammed behind, 19 lives caught in a stone throat. He ran back into the snow to raise the alarm. By afternoon, police and firefighters had arrived. They studied the passage, grim-faced. This was no ordinary rescue. The gun barrel was too narrow to work with tools, too unforgiving to simply yank the boy free. Attempts were made, hands pulled, bodies shifted, strategies whispered through stone. Nothing worked. Every tug brought screams, pain sharp enough to silence the helpers. Hours dragged on. In the dark, Peter began to lose grip on reality, hallucinating snakes biting his leg, fear twisting his voice into terror. The others huddled close, trying to give warmth that their bodies no longer had to spare. Outside, the sun fell. The cave grew colder, the threat multiplying. If they could not free him soon, it would not just be Peter they lost. It would be everyone trapped behind him. At 8:30 p.m., after nearly 12 hours, rescuers tried something new. They passed down a thermos of soapy water. Slowly, carefully, they poured it around Peter's knee. Firefighters tied a rope around his ankle, and on a signal, inside and outside worked together. Gentle pulls matched with wriggles, stone eased by liquid. With one last careful tug, the knee slid free. Relief broke like a wave through the passage. The boy was guided forward, inch by inch, until the crevice was behind him. The others crawled out, exhausted but alive, faces hollow from the ordeal. Peter's leg was fractured and bruised, his body chilled near the edge of hypothermia. He was carried out, treated, and eventually recovered. The cave kept none of them that day, but it left marks all the same, on bone, on memory, on every heart that learned how narrow the distance can be between daring and disaster. Underground, mistakes don't echo, they multiply. In Real Well, two friends misjudged the cold, the water, and the gear they thought would hold, until one was left to climb out alone carrying the weight of absence. In Cenote, Kalimba, a single wrong turn in a maze dissolved trust, and in the silence of a flooded tunnel, 2 divers suffocated within sight of rescue. In Knox cave, it was not water but stone that trapped a boy's leg and sealed 19 people into a stone throat, until soap, rope, and patience gave them back to daylight. The thread is always the same, a decision that feels small, leaving wetsuits in the car, trusting arrows, pushing forward without a helmet, becomes fatal when the cave decides it will. Nature does not bargain, and time inside the earth moves in one direction, toward cold, toward exhaustion, toward limits. What makes these stories unbearable and unforgettable is not just the loss, but the human fight against inevitability. Andrew climbing into the waterfall to reach his friend. Divers buddy breathing in black water, trading seconds of life. Rescuers pouring soapy water into a boy's prison of rock. Again and again, people choose to act when the cave whispers, it's already too late. That is what caving reveals at its sharpest edge. Not only the indifference of stone and water, but the persistence of those who go in after, who refuse to leave someone behind until physics itself closes the door. And when the survivors emerge, soaked, bruised, broken with grief, they carry out more than themselves. They bring back a reminder. Underground, courage does not always win, but without it, there is nothing at all.